I thought I would have never forgiven that pastor. Let's go back to 2018. In 2018, I was having a conversation with someone and I asked them a question. The question that I asked them was an innocent question. I just wanted to be nice. And them being a kind person, they answered me in a very loving way, in a very loving tone. But it made me feel rejected because they told me no. And I remember the pain associated with that no. My emotional intelligence at the time was very, very poor, y'all. And I sent them a message that was profanity filled. I was so hurt, y'all, that I basically cursed them out. So the person takes a screenshot of the messages that I sent to them, and they sent the pictures or the screenshots to my spiritual father, who was my pastor at that time. He reached out to me, called me and said, hey, look, I got the messages. Unacceptable as a leader, unacceptable as a man of God. You need to leave this person alone. I felt humiliated because at this time I was a newly appointed leader in a new ministry at our church at the time. So in my shame and guilt at the time, and the person and I being a part of the same community and the same church, I ran. I said, you know what? Let me start visiting another church just so that there can be some distance between us. Okay, we are separated. So y'all, I am in deep condemnation at this point. So some days go by, right? I am at this new church. My spiritual father, my pastor at the time, he messages me and he says, man, the way you reacted in that moment, the way you went from 0 to 100. And he said, based on the level of, I guess, rage you had in that moment, I think you need to seek professional help. So what he suggested was maybe you need to call a mental health clinic, basically, for persons who are mentally ill and challenged. You need to call them and tell them that you have a problem. Now, looking back at it now, it was probably just emotional intelligence. Therapy was needed. Some inner healing was needed. Some deep soul work was needed. But to diagnose me as someone who was mentally ill, looking back at it now, that was a bit extreme, right? But my spiritual father was my hero. In my opinion, he could do no wrong. So here I am calling this mental health clinic, this establishment for persons with mental illnesses. And the lady was like, sir, this place that you're calling, this is for persons who are so mentally challenged or mentally ill that they can't function within society. And the lady was like, I don't think we have room here for you. You're not someone who sounds as if you are dealing with an actual mental illness. I said, well, what do you want me to do? My spiritual father told me to call y'all. She said, perhaps you need to go to therapy. It just so happened at this time, they were doing these one-on-one sessions with Christian therapists for free. I said, tell me more. So I got the connection, got the contact, and I went ahead and I reached out and I plugged in. They were like, okay, come in, let's do an assessment. I did an assessment, filled out some questions, and as expected, there's rejection, there's abandonment, there's mother wounds, there is father wounds, there is low self-esteem. All of these things are going on. All of the things that contributed to that kind of response that I gave because I heard the word no. All of it was confirmed in the assessment. There is some things going on. There is some trauma that needs to be healed. My therapist said, man, every time I ask you something, it's always my spiritual father, my spiritual father, my father, my father, my father, my pastor. And she said, I don't normally interfere with persons' relationships, but I do think that you need to start considering life outside of a relationship with him, because it's almost as if you're becoming a 2.0. Everything is him, and you need to really work on establishing your own identity. You're basically becoming a 2.0. Once I've already gotten confirmation that something needs to be done, there's no questions to be asked. I'm doing it. My therapist said, hey, you need to cut that. My whole thing was, hey, this woman knows what she's talking about. She's a trained professional. So I said, you know what, let me cut this. But instead of being impulsive and just cutting the connection, I felt the need to pause and assess the situation. That was the first time in a long time that I felt the need to pause and really look at the situation. For some reason, I just wanted to know. I wonder how the other persons who were journeying with my spiritual father, because he had several sons that went to the church, I wonder how the relationship was for them. And one particular brother, I reached out to him. He mentioned something to me that was so disgusting that it literally felt like somebody took my heart and snatched it out. My jaw dropped, my heart dropped, my heart sank. It's like the world just stopped. So I thought, there's no way he would lie. So I get ready to confront my spiritual father, and he led us to believe that, hey, if you don't have a father, you don't have nothing. You know, I remember calling him bro, like I called any other male in my life. And he was like, you know, you constantly calling someone who's older than you bro reveals your daddy wounds. So I called him, never forget it. I WhatsApp video called him. He was driving on the road. He was shocked that I knew this information. And I said, I just wanted to know, is his story true? And he looked me in the face and he said, yeah, it's true. And his reason was, you know, I'm from a culture where men connect with men in a way that is liberating, in a way that is freeing. And I wanted to just bring that culture to the Bahamas. And I thought, oh, okay. And yes, the encounter that took place with that son is true. What's so heartbreaking about this whole confession was we would have never received it if I never went to therapy. And my therapist, God bless her, if she never told me to examine my relationship with him, we would have never gotten this confession, which means he would have been continuing to live basically a secret life. What's also heartbreaking was after he admitted this on WhatsApp, he comes back into my chat and tries to bend a casual conversation as if he didn't just openly confess to basically using his power and influence to introduce perverted teachings accompanied by perverted actions and philosophies to the men that he led. So I had to stay in therapy because I have a new wound now. So here I am trying to figure out how the person who suggested that I go get help because I have to be mentally ill is doing things that basically confirm that I was not the only one who needed help. But anyway, I have to now deal with the humiliation of being exposed for cursing someone out as a leader and as a Christian, as a man of God. And now I have to deal with now understanding that my spiritual father at the time has traumatized me. And I'm not the only one. He's traumatized a few other persons as well. And thank God for good leadership, because my good leaders stepped in and they did what the Lord wanted us to do. And it was handled biblically. Here I am in therapy, y'all. My story has now changed from, good day, everybody. My name is Alexander. I'm here to just get a bit more acquainted with my emotions and to grow emotionally, because I curse somebody out, to now, hey, everybody, my name is Alexander, and I'm here because the only father figure in my life turns out to be using his authority and power to basically manipulate me and a few other men. I'm sitting in therapy, and the therapist says, you have a lot going on in your brain. You have a lot going on in your mind. But she says the brain can be retrained. Those are the words that changed my life. She said, although you have certain paradigms and philosophies and the behavior is linked to a belief system and it's trauma and it's a lot of things that we have to deal with. She says the brain can be retrained. In other words, you can rewire your mind, think different. Y'all don't understand how before going to therapy, I didn't even know a renewed mind was possible. I was in ministry at this time, perhaps for 6 to 7 years, ministering, being powerfully used by God, and never believed that transformation was possible. Why? Because I grew up in a culture where trauma was the norm, and even belief in God wasn't strong enough at the time to convince me that it was possible to think different. I believed that whenever I got angry, I had to lash out. I'm telling y'all, I'm in ministry at this time. Man of God, on the flyers, popular, in demand, highly requested, pouring into people's lives. And the belief system was literally, whenever I get angry, I have to lash out. Whenever I feel rejected, I have to lash out. There's no self-control. But you have the Holy Spirit, and self-control is a characteristic of the fruit of the Spirit. It sounded good and it looked good on paper, but I did not believe it. A therapist saying the brain can be retrained is what helped me to believe that the mind can be renewed. My therapist was saying, hey, the brain can be retrained. The scriptures were saying, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If it wasn't for therapy, I would not be here today. So I get this revelation that, wait, the brain can be retrained. I got to tell the world about this. There are people in trauma who are broken and hurt, and they need to know that the brain can be retrained. There are some people that will never go to therapy because if you go to therapy, something is really, really wrong with you. So I need to go out there and be the person who tells somebody the brain can be retrained. You were raped, you were molested, you were neglected, your daddy left, your mama left, you grew up in foster care all your life, and you're traumatized. But if you are alive, you qualify for a retrained brain. So immediately, I wrote this short rap. I recorded it, had one of my brothers do a video, and I uploaded the video on Instagram. And I took some funds from my paycheck and I paid to have the video marketed. That video did 1 million views, over 100,000 likes. And people were messaging me and DMing me, telling me I needed that. All of a sudden, this message of hope is impacting persons left, right, and center. And that's when it became crystal clear to me. I was born to ignite hope into the lives of those who are mentally challenged. Those who are dealing with mental health battles, those who have mental health diagnosis. It is my duty. I was born to be that beacon of hope. When that video went viral, it became abundantly clear. This is why I am here. I then went into a journey of forgiveness, and I'll probably do a separate video on that. Forgiving even when it's painful. Never once did I hear, I'm sorry. Never once did I hear, I was wrong. But guess what? I don't need to hear, I'm sorry, and I don't need to hear, I was wrong. Because you are in the hands of the Lord. It's about finding the purpose in the pain. And what the Lord said to me in 2025 was, this is not about the actions of a person. It's about the actions of the Lord despite the actions of a person. This is not about sympathy. This is not about feeling sorry for myself. This is about what happens when the enemy meant it for evil, and God spins it around and says, nah, I got a bigger plan. Thank you. Thank you for telling me that something had to be wrong up here. make that call. Because if I didn't make that phone call, I would have never went to therapy. I would have never been told that the brain could be retrained. And I would not be a mental health advocate. There are so many things I can say to you about seeking the Lord when it comes to spiritual parents. And when it comes to spiritual parenting, make sure to have conversations, because a lot of times people put these labels on us. You are my son, and there are no conversations. If I am your son or I am your daughter, there needs to be a conversation. You don't just spiritual son me and go about your life. That's what I learned. There was no conversations. I just got a label, and that was it. But it's not about that. It's about understanding that even in your darkest seasons, God is preparing you for something great. There is still light in the darkest moments. Out of that season, a pastor was birthed. I never wanted to be a pastor. When the prophetic word came that you're going to be a pastor, I had anxiety. I remember my sister next to me saying, "Don't pass out in here." That's how out of breath I was. A year after I was dealing with the betrayal of a pastor, I'm called to the office. I had to give him my yes. And I've been crushed ever since I gave him that yes. I found purpose in the pain. I thought I would have never forgiven that pastor. Here we are 6 years later, and I could come in front of a camera and say that not only did I pray for him for 30 days, not only did I see him probably a year ago and greeted him, but I've forgiven him. I was so moved and inspired by the revelation that I got when I went to therapy in 2018 that it inspired me to write this small ebook called Stay in the Fight. And what it is just a small 30-page word of encouragement for those that are dealing with mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, those who don't even know that their brain has a think different switch, because all they know of all they've ever known is how to think in trauma. The link is in my bio. Check it out. Let me know how it blessed you. But I can write a mental health book, talk about this, and encourage others. Thank you so much for checking the video out. Hope it blessed someone. Hey, share your story. It's not about platforming the offender or giving the offender a platform. It's about shining your light so that men may see your works and glorify your Father in heaven. Every brain counts. Every brain matters. Peace.